a little bit. All righty. Hello, everyone. Good afternoon. I hope you are doing good. Today is Monday, January 8th, a few minutes after 12 p.m. Pacific Standard, 3 o'clock East Coast time. And it is it 2 o'clock for you, right, Julie?
2 o'clock for me.
Excellent. So I want to welcome those who are coming in, those who are watching. My name's Amy, Mystic Road Tarot. And to my left or right, depending on the screen, I have Julie Cuccia Watts as my guest, who is the creatrix. And I love that word. I have to keep that word with you, the creatrix. Hi, Jonathan, Robin, and Creative Intentions. Holly, thank you all for coming in. Julie is the creator of Real Sky Astrology Tarot, the workbook, the Mott Tarot, Ancestral Path Tarot. The list goes on.
Yeah.
And she will be adding soon to that list, and we'll talk about that later on. So, Julie, let's just go into it. Thank you so much for being here. The usual introductions. If there's any issues technically for those who are watching, please let us know. I think we're sounding good, and I think our signal's all good. Let us know. Gerald, thank you for coming or listening. Thank you for being here. So does everything look good on your side, Julie?
I can join the chat.
You
I
can.
just had a button that I could join the chat, so
Okay.
I can.
Go ahead and just, let's see. We're fine-tuning this technically, so hang tight.
Yeah.
Because I saw the expression on your face. Yay! There you go.
It's like there was a screen that came up and blocked, and it said which person do you want to be, which account do you want to use, and it's like, okay.
Yeah, it could be simple.
Here I am. Okay.
There we go. I'm going to add to that. Thank you for joining. All righty.
Yeah.
All righty. So, Julie, for those who are new, I see many here in the chat already know who you are, but for those who want to watch the replay, just let's focus a little bit on how you came to your spiritual practice, like in a quick paragraph verbally, how you came to your practice and astrology.
I guess I just sort of stumbled on it. Like people around me were using it, and I got interested in it, in astrology first and then tarot, and just sort of fell into it just from friends, new friends who just connected, and it just seems to snowball as time goes on.
Are you in touch with some of the people who introduced you to it? And do you know if they're still doing the practice?
I think like my original astrologer, Muriel O'Connor from Milwaukee, she passed away, probably 10 years ago. She's quite a bit older than me and had her own shop in Milwaukee, the House of Scorpio. And she was really instrumental in getting me started on thinking about cards. Like at first it was greeting cards, because I did paintings for her, astrology paintings, in 1984. And she said, Julie, you should make these into greeting cards, because these are too good to just sell in my shop. And, so that was the first inkling that I even thought about cards. But in 1984, you had to get 4-color prints done, which were very expensive, and it was completely impossible to do that. Like it was very expensive.
Yeah. Printing was not really a new kind of technology, but it was
old
something.
School.
It was old school. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. So you had to get published if you wanted to get someone to print your work. I mean, it would be the best way, the most economical way for anyone, unless you're independently wealthy, to get, to go to a printer and have plates done, because everything was done on plates and 4-color plates. And that was something permanent and expensive. And now everything is digital and it's wax and, you know,
Go to
technology is changing.
you go to Staples and you could get it done the same day or
Sure,
2
and
days.
color, like, that was
Yeah.
unheard of. Color was,
Yeah.
everything my early work is all black and white ink, and although I did oil paintings for Muriel, um, that I would have never been able to do a printing of that,
Wow.
afford
Well,
it.
great. Well, grateful for what we have now,
No
you
kidding,
know,
it's so easy
so
now.
much easier.
Yeah,
Yes.
really.
So then we have the paintings and then the astrology, and then tarot came afterwards. And
Yes, tarot, right.
you
It
merge
was
all
my
of those 3 forms together.
Yeah, my early astrology pictures I used, um, in the making of Real Sky Astrology, because I had all these files and the old pictures of the paintings I did, and because I was babysitting for my grandchildren at the time, and I didn't wanna have all the oil paint out with them. Even though I did that with my own kids, I was like, "Oh, I don't wanna have," because I didn't have a designated room for oil painting, and so I did all of the Real Sky Astrology tarot digitally, and that was the first time I ever did a deck digitally, and, so that was a new way for me to do things. So I
They
just took
seem more
chunks of my other paintings and, morphed them the way I wanted to,
mm,
because Photoshop is so easy for me now after doing so many different decks and having to take a painting and put it on Photoshop to put the titles in and maybe clean up some shine or whatever from the photograph being taken. I've learned how to use Photoshop pretty prolifically.
it changes the workflow entirely.
Yeah, it's clean.
Yeah,
It's clean, and I'm not poisoned by oil paint.
that's right.
Yeah,
That's right. Because of the toxicity of what's the makeup of the oil for the oil paint.
yeah, yeah. 'Cause some of them have cadmium and barium, and like some of the colors, some of the better reds are very poisonous, and the whites
Yeah.
can be poisonous. So
It's like the red dye, right? The red dyes in food coloring back then and certain products, people had sensitivities to it.
definitely,
Um, and I don't know, they've found substitutes now for that.
yeah.
Um, how have you seen from the time of your discovery and your studies and your practice of astrology? Because you started off tropical Western
Oh, for sure.
astrology, and
Yes.
then you went to
Yeah.
sidereal.
Yes.
Um, a
Did
major transition.
yeah. From like 1980 until 2009, I was
Mm,
Western astrology, never
mm,
thinking that this sky that I was, you know, the sky that I was working with wasn't the actual sky. I really thought it was the actual sky. So when you say the sun is in Scorpio, I believe the sun was in Scorpio. And why wouldn't you?
yeah,
And to be shown on a computer, uh, an astronomy app that said, no, the sun is not in Scorpio, the sun is in Libra. And to be just kind of kicked in the gut, like, what? Why? What? Why isn't it? Why isn't it the same? And to learn about precession um, and what that means. And I knew that it was Vedic, and I knew Vedic was closer to the real sky. I knew that. And I wasn't really interested in learning that system for whatever reason.
mhm,
I was pretty enmeshed in the Western way of doing things with the wheel and,
yeah,
the typical horoscope. I was very, I kind of imprinted on that and
yeah,
decided to try it. Just try it as an experiment in 2009 because I wasn't ready to commit to real sky at all. And especially because Mahat was all lunar Western astrology, and it lined
Yes.
up beautifully with tarot. And I was really like invested in that. So
Well,
I thought,
you
yeah,
put so much time. You put a good portion of your life into Western astrology.
right, right.
And there's nothing wrong with that, because that's still part of you, would you say? Would you
No,
say the Western No.
I mean,
Really?
only
You're really
in that these are the houses and this is where the planets are. And, my original chart, when I look at it, I see that the
Mhm.
planets are all in the same place that they should be, my natal chart.
Yes.
And even the way that I look at a chart has stayed the same, but because of the switching in of the signs, the precession of the equinoxes, made me look at the symbolism of the zodiac in a different way.
Yeah.
And it kind of opened a Pandora's box for me with the Egyptian stuff and, the ancient Egyptian. What were they looking at? What were they seeing? And what did it mean to them when a different constellation was observable in
Mm.
the east at equinox,
Yeah.
an hour before dawn? Like, what did that mean to them? And then I wanted to compare it to, the history and to the gods that were worshipped at the time. And there was some consistency there. And I was sort of like intrigued, like I wanted
Mhm.
to know more.
It
So,
adds more depth.
yeah.
Do you feel that moving with Real Sky Astrology, it's filled in maybe some of the questions or some of the things that you felt could have been missing in Western astrology, or does it just take it in a different direction, the Real Sky Astrology?
It just seems clearer. It just
Okay.
seems like, I don't need to have all the minutia. All I
Mhm.
need are the planets and the sign and where they are. And it just like creates this paragraph, like it just creates this dialogue with the sky. And when I, you know, overlay these Egyptian gods into these signs, which are like pretty clear to me that these are the Egyptian gods in these signs, when I apply their attributes to the sign, it all of a sudden gives it a different kind of flavor, and it feels more grounded and it feels more real to me.
More
So,
empowering?
yeah, it's like like the clouds have been parted and I see something there. So when I look at Selkit for Scorpio, the goddess Selkit, who was a Scorpion goddess, and her priesthood um, were they had the knowledge of poisons and antidotes, and there's all kinds of mythology that goes with it. It just seemed really clear that this very tiny portion of the sky that crosses the ecliptic is just this like moment of life or death, this very short moment of life or death. It's either healing or it's transforming.
Transforming, yes.
And these people who are born in this little window are these people who are healers, and they transform. They take poison and they find a solution.
It was fascinating when reading through. Here, I'll turn to. There we go.
Yeah.
Going through the notes, and normally no, I shouldn't say normally, with all respect.
Well,
We
it
would
is
associate
normally,
we
traditionally,
would associate
right.
Sagittarius with temperance, but in this case, we place temperance, and we see temperance is used from when reading this part of Scorpio. Temperance is used in this energy that you approach for healing, for transformation. You don't rush into it.
No.
You ease into it, and you feel, because of Scorpio being associated with water, there's a different approach that you would take using these gods and goddesses for each of these signs. And so I slowed down my way of thinking when going through the book, especially going through Libra. We have here for justice, of course. Virgo, the high priestess. I have a deck that actually introduced me to Virgo as the high priestess. And I had to stop and go, whoa, wait a second. And then when I was reading this here and the information from the other deck that I have associating the high priestess with Virgo, it's like, it is creating. It is a different form of a concept for Virgo and the high priestess. It's interesting.
Yeah.
I got so much, Julie. So, and I did say I'm going to keep it simple. So
it's hard to keep it simple, but
it is because because I want to bring in these differences. I want to talk a little bit about the Western astrology and sidereal. I almost don't want to. I don't want to put it as verses.
No, like it isn't verses.
In one corner of the ring, we have Western astrology.
No. Yeah, it isn't. Yeah. It's not a fight.
Yeah, exactly.
It's just a difference. I mean, in ancient Egypt, the ancient Egyptians had a star calendar, and they had a seasonal calendar, and they had a social calendar. And sometimes those three calendars would go out of sync. And this is how they kept track of vast amounts of time. And sometimes the stars would shift, and so they'd rebuild the temple to align to it again. Like you'll see actual places that have been like rebuilt to face a star or a constellation so that they're honoring. And that it shows this depth of knowledge that they were watching so closely that they noticed that there was movement. And, we come from a time when the word is God. And so when you have this book of sacred knowledge, you're not going to change it. And it just would go against our way to change it. So I'm really grateful that Western astrology has held on to all this knowledge, the way that it came in. And I feel also free to go back to the ancient times and see how they did it and then apply it to what we have now. And so to use both, to use the houses as they are and the planets as they are and the retrogrades that we use as they are and the placement of the planets in the houses the way that they are. But then for me to overlap these ancient impressions of the netters and nature. Netters are the gods of Egypt, but they're also nature. And the way that I've come to think about it is that the stars are global. So I can be here in North America and the moon is in Scorpio today. And I could be in Australia and the moon would be in Scorpio today. And I would look at the moon in the sky and it would be this crescent moon. But if I was in Australia, it would be the opposite crescent. It would still be a crescent. It would still be a waning moon, but to visually see it, it would look opposite to me because I'm on the other side of the world. But it's still the same sign. It's still in the same sign. It's still waning. That's global. And when we bring the sun into it, then it becomes local and becomes seasonal. And, like we bring the seasons into it, that's local, that's seasonal. And that's a separate wheel for me. And I made that distinction even when I was doing Mahat, which was all Western. The wheel of the sun was the seasons. and the wheel of the moon and the stars, that was celestial, and it was astrology. And I made that separate, like the two wheels of the chariot. Those were two different wheels.
Yeah.
Even though they ran at the same time.
They serve different purposes.
Serve different purposes.
Yeah. They're cyclically. They're doing what they do normally, but they're doing it in a different direction. Not a different direction, but for a different purpose.
Yeah.
And I think that's something to keep in mind when exploring all forms of astrology. We are sharing the same moon. We are sharing the sun. We're on the same planet. Some people will beg to differ on that. That's
That's really getting deep.
Yeah, that's the ethereal astrology. I don't know. That'll be coming up in 1,000 years, the other realm of astrology. But I want to kind of get a little bit more specific. So for someone, here, I'm just beginning with sidereal because you're changing the way that you've always known astrology, you being me. I've always followed it as Western astrology. I heard about Vedic astrology probably about 15 years ago. I went into a store that served ethnic goods. And the woman behind the counter, we started talking, and I told her I do tarot. And she goes, "Oh, I do Vedic astrology." She's from India. And I go, "What's that?" And she goes, "Tell me your birthday." And I gave her my birth date. And she told me hers. And she goes, "I'm an Aries, you're a Taurus." And I go, "But we share the same birth period, from that we know Western astrology, from like April 20th to May 20th, that you're a Taurus." She goes, "No, no, no. Vedic astrology." And she began to explain. And she got my curiosity. And when I went online to look information about it, it was completely different. I wasn't quite ready to jump into it. And then I let it go. And then, like in recent years, through Julianne Victoria, through the Peacock's Eye, her channel, she practices Vedic and Western astrology. So I brought those two realms together. And then, of course, Michelle Marie from Astrological Tarot, she focuses on Vedic, but it's different. We use the sidereal dates, I believe. Maybe you could clarify this. The sidereal dates are different from Vedic. Is that
I think
from what you understand?
From what I understand, I mean, some people's dates are different because they might use a 30-degree, regardless of how big the constellation is. They might use a midpoint and go 30 degrees. I tend to want to stay within the size of the constellation. So my Virgo is 44 degrees and my Scorpio is 6.5 degrees. And that feels better to me. Doesn't have to be everybody's cup of tea. Mm-hmm. If you're doing charts for people, you probably want to have those 30 degrees. I don't know, but I feel like I'm going to go with the size of the constellation. And, what I really like about Vedic is that it reinforces that rising sign being important, that, your sign is the place in the east, which reinforces that Egyptian age thing where they're looking at the eastern sky at equinox, an hour before dawn, and the constellation that's on the horizon is the age. That's the age. And to me, that brings that back to the importance of that eastern horizon. Mm-hmm. And so they just focus on that, because personal astrology charts, that's kind of a modern thing, because you didn't get your astrology chart done in ancient Egypt. Maybe the pharaoh did. They might have done the pharaoh's chart, but they weren't doing regular people's charts.
Yeah.
They may have marked special days like in tombs. They'll have special days uh, in the sarcophagus that marked like events in their life, and they might have what decan that was in when that
Yeah.
happened. And so that's how we have knowledge of decans being used and stars that were associated with decans. But I need to know more about that because I don't know about the stars that are aligned to different decans.
Yeah.
So that's another little rabbit hole that I could go down someday.
Well, I'm curious if now going through the sidereal aspect, before I finish, sidereal, real sky, astrology, the terms, the wording, same or different? Sidereal astrology,
Very close.
astrophysical,
Very
and real
close. I mean, I would say the sidereal is the real sky, and I use real sky just because my stuff is so different from what other people are doing generally in sidereal.
Okay.
And I didn't know the word sidereal, I don't think, when I started Real Sky. I just knew it was the real sky because
Okay.
when I was introduced to it, that's what it was called. This is the real sky. And so I was like, okay, it's real sky astrology. And then boom, that kind of stuck in my head. And so when I was using it, I just used the real sky.
So your mentor, the one who introduced you to real sky, did he use that term real
Yeah,
sky or did you create it?
he used it. He said, he said, the real sky works, is
Okay.
what he said to me. And
Okay.
he goes, I know you're mad, but the real sky works. And so I thought of it as the real sky and
Okay.
didn't know there was a term. I didn't know there was a term because I didn't call astrology Western astrology. I just called it astrology. So I went from astrology to real sky astrology. And there was
Okay.
no, okay, this is Western and this is Vedic and this is sidereal. That wasn't,
Yes.
this is tropical. That wasn't in my head.
I mean, now I know we were speaking. Yeah.
Now it's there.
When we last spoke, now there are all these different levels of astrology. You know, everyone's creating their own. And with seeing all of this, you know, it's great because I've had some other guests who have different forms of astrology practices. Um, I and I have them and I connect with them because it's different information that I can apply to my practice to understand astrology in a different perspective instead of just the signs and the planets and then of course the houses. Um, it gives me I like to get a little bit of everything from other places, but I also have to be careful. And I say this to those who are watching that ask those questions like I am with Julie. And I'm going to post some questions here, Julie, because I know a few people are talking, so that I can fully understand when I'm taking information from one aspect of astrology and information from another, how I could amalgamate it and create it something of my own, like you did with Real Sky.
Right.
You took it from Richard. His name was Richard, or is Richard?
Robert.
Robert. I'm sorry.
Just showed me a computer. He wasn't an astrologer. He just showed this computer graphic because we were talking about temples and alignments and how the stars move. And I was, considered myself an astrologer. And he asked me point blank, why do astrologers use an antiquated sky? And I was like, I think they know they do. And then he was like, no, they don't. And he was just kind of rude about it, and kind of put me on the spot to explain why. And I was already shocked that I wasn't a Scorpio and I was a Libra. I was already shocked by the fact that the sky that I was using wasn't the actual sky. And so I had my astrological crisis, as Patrick puts it. Patches from the wheel, the living wheel. He's always still kind of talking about his fresh experience of finding out that the Western astrology doesn't use a real sky or the actual sky.
Yeah.
So, that he wasn't an astrologer. He's an engineer and an Egyptologist and an author. So not an astrologer. So all of the astrology things and the associations with the gods, that's my stuff. The only thing he showed me was the real sky. And he said, if you write about this, you'll be on the cutting edge. And he said, the real sky works. And I wasn't even ready to even experiment with it at that point because I was still deeply entrenched in my own work, which was all Western.
Yeah. It took some time.
But it took from April until July when I had a dream about a scarab pushing the sun and the dung beetle. And I realized it was like a chariot. And that was the first time I'd ever seen the chariot as Cancer, because the scarab in Cancer, this Cancer was originally a scarab in ancient Egypt. And that was the first time I ever made the association with Cancer and the chariot. And I went, maybe I need to look at all of those old associations again. And maybe, I guess this might be a tarot deck, because it was, the summer of 2019. And I was thinking about doing a day planner for 2020, which would not have been good. That would have been a waste of time. So I dropped that. I know. Thank you. So I dropped that and I started playing around with images. And, that was, I had little babies around and I wasn't sure if I wanted to start painting again. So that's when I decided to do the digital deck. And by the time I was really getting ready to get it out there, the plague hit and everybody was like, Julie, you've got to get this out for us. You got to do the workbook. You got to get it out because we're all bored. And so because we had time and my husband was retired, and he was able to edit my workbook for me, and we were able to get it out. And everybody had it for something to do during the plague.
I think, for just a quick side note, I think that experience that we had of, 4 years ago, really, but those who really, we started YouTube channels, people start discovering their practice of whatever they were doing, witchcraft, astrology, tarot, so on and so forth, yoga, meditation. I feel for those who started that kind of work and they're still doing it now, but they're building momentum, like they're being dedicated and whatnot. I think that time of all these shifts happening and the ones who are staying committed to it are the ones who I feel are going to benefit the most from it, because they it awakens something in them. And it's something that they really needed. We're seeing some people kind of falling off a little bit, and finding that maybe it wasn't what they thought it was, or they have no time for it. But it's nice to see people who did this time of self-discovery, finding the tarot, finding all these different practices, and sharing their journey with us to now 4 years later. It's nice to see some of these individuals who have actually grown, and some who just stopped because, it's time to get back to life and it was fun while it lasted. But it's been wonderful to see the journey of everyone on on YouTube, whether they've stuck around or not. So I'm just saying this because it is transformational.
Well, I hadn't been on YouTube. I had a channel, but that was just to upload videos, and I didn't think about it as like something I would broadcast. I shared a lecture I did in 2013, and that was, that was on my YouTube channel.
Yeah, I saw that.
But I didn't really think of it as anything. It was like storage. It's like, where can I put this? I'll just put it here.
Yeah.
And it was Robin, who's in our audience,
Yes.
introduced me to Amber Ton, who had a channel. And it was Robin who introduced me to Amber. And that was very early, before the plague really hit. So it was like this time of year in 2020, before we had, the lockdown. So the timing of it was like pretty amazing to get this work out and to make it available and to have it be, talked about on YouTube. And my channel still is no big deal. I just do these little shorts, but I don't feel like I can talk to a camera. I need to talk to people. So I can't just be in front of a camera just talking. That's I can't do that.
You need something to initiate and then start. You need the interchange.
Yeah, I do. The one-on-one, I need that.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. Let's take a breather because I still haven't scratched the surface, Julie.
Okay, all right.
And we won't go long. It won't be like hours long. But I don't know if I have to scroll up here. Jerry Shockmo made a comment. Here we go. I'm a double Leo with Mercury and Cancer. Why do people care so much about Mercury? I don't really understand my celestial chart. And then there's the birth date there. Now the planets are the same. This in real sky and Western astrology, they haven't moved or anything.
Well, they've gone into another sign. They've stayed in the house that they're in, but they're going to be in a different sign because the whole dial moves. Everything has moved. Okay. But the planets stay in their houses. So if you had Mercury in, your second house or your first house or whatever, it would still be there. It would just be a different sign.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's like the sign changes. The sign changes, the planets don't, depending on the degree. It could be early, it could be middle, it could be late.
Yeah. This planets are going to stay in their houses right where they were, in the positions that they were. So that's not going to change. Why is Mercury important? It's the way you think. It's the way you communicate. It's an inner planet. We have a few inner planets, and all the planets are outer planets, but our inner planets are our personal planets. So how you think and how you feel, or how you communicate, it's kind of important. And where your Mercury lands will describe how you communicate and how you think. And Venus is another inner planet. Anything inside the orbit between Earth and the sun is a personal planet. And the moon is a personal planet, but it can step outside of that inner orbit and come back. So it's almost like taking a little astral journey and then coming back every month, and it travels through all the signs every month. So the moon, I think, is probably more important than anything in a chart.
I feel those planets that are closest to us are the ones that we obviously feel the most. Mercury, Venus, Mars. And then as those other planets, Saturn, Jupiter, ones that move slower, we don't feel their effects as much. They're there, but because they're moving slower, we don't feel the full process until it falls into our sign and we start having things happen.
It's something important, then it
Yeah.
leaves a scar.
Yeah. But I've always mentioned anything retrograde, any of these returns that fall, like Saturn returns or whatnot, they're nothing to fear, and I'm not
No.
gonna say it breaks my heart, but I wish people would stop posting and saying, lock your doors, close the windows, stay inside, don't make any transactions or whatnot.
For Mercury retrograde?
Yeah, or some of these other ones, the Saturn returns, it's just like, I know there's a lot more hype that's going into it,
Wow.
but
You just have
it's
to
just
learn to ride it.
yeah,
Know
that's
what
just
the energy is gonna be and what your opportunities are gonna be, and don't
yeah,
try to swim up against the current.
don't control it.
Yeah, go with the flow. So if it
Exactly.
is Mercury retrograde, do your edits, rewrite, redo, do all the re's.
Yeah, retrogrades are I came across this, not too long ago. It's redoing, it's, reliving, maybe thinking about some things, what you've learned, and how you can approach it, after the retrograde. I'm just wary, I'm just, um, with any retrograde, I just keep it with a grain of salt, and if something happens, then, I go with it. I don't plan. I think retrogrades is something that you shouldn't be planning anything. I
Well,
don't know.
when retrograde hit this time, I did all my edits for my workbook, and it flowed so
It
perfectly.
did.
Yeah, it was
Okay.
like the best thing to be doing during this Mercury retrograde. And I mean, a few years ago when we had Mercury retrograde over December, um, I had put my oracle that I was working on away. Like I wasn't even going to work on it. I wasn't even going to do it. I decided I wasn't going to do it. It was too much. And then Mercury retrograde hit. And all of a sudden I was like, I really could use some moon cards. I need phases of the moon. I need smaller portions. There
Yeah.
needs to be a waxing crescent and a waning crescent and a gibbous. I need these. And then I was like, oh, you know what? I could put those in the oracle. And then I had the 8 spaces for these moon cards. And I was like, all right, I'm back in. And I dove back into the oracle and I finished it that year. And
Wow.
now I just have to write the book for it.
But you're starting.
Yes. I'd already started it, and I like to work on my timelines first, and I like to do my pictures first and then write about it. And that's how I have to work.
Yeah.
Regardless of if the program for writing will be glitchy if you put pictures in first.
The
I
writing's
do it
first.
that way. The pictures come first and then the writing comes for me.
Okay.
Because I'm visual and I need pictures. I need to see it and then I can write about it.
I'm thinking about the Libra in you when it comes to balancing and doing that kind of work. Do you feel now, since seeing that you are Libra,
Well,
but can you still associate some of the Scorpio of
well,
your, or is it like
the work that I was worried about was the Mahat Tarot, and the Mahat Tarot has got scales on the cover, so how mad could I be? Right?
I've
It was
accepted. I've
like I
accepted it.
was like, okay, that's why I have a deck with scales on it.
Mhm.
There it is.
That's a symbol.
Yeah, I know.
That's almost like that's your signature.
That's my smack in the head from the universe.
Live it, learn it, do it.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, I'm I'm still there's still aspects of Western astrology, okay? And I know I mentioned this to you. If not, here it goes. Um, I still feel that there are some similarities with my natal chart Western wise.
Well,
But also,
your sun didn't change though, did it?
no, the sun didn't, but my moon and rising did, from
Okay.
fire to earth, or I'm sorry, from fire to water. It's completely different. So the moon and rising for my chart resonates with me real sky, because it makes sense. It makes sense. But there's also the rising in my Western that I kind of feel is there. It's a fire sign. It's one that gets things going, starts. I'm a self-starter. You give me a project, I'll get it going. But there are some aspects that it takes me a while to finish it. And so, because
So
I
what
can
is
see
your
that,
rising? So what is your real sky rising?
it is Pisces.
Okay.
So that I totally feel with my practice. And I don't want to go into my chart too much, but I know
Right.
I mentioned to you my 12th house. I have a lot of water.
Mm-hmm.
I have a lot of water there. And that's what I'm feeling. And I have this is going to lead me to the next question.
Okay.
When you have a return, like your return in Western astrology, Saturn return, let's just talk Saturn return, Western astrology, and your Saturn return in real sky astrology in a different sign. And if that Saturn return is currently what's taking place sidereally, but Western, that Saturn return isn't happening for a few more years. How would you follow something like that?
Wow. When I looked at my chart, when I converted my chart, I just looked at where everything was in the real sky.
Mm-hmm.
And then when Saturn returned to that spot,
Sidereally or
visually
real sky?
real, in the real, when it actually was there,
Yeah.
then I took note of what was happening. And there
Yeah.
was a pattern. And of course, Saturn goes retrograde and it goes over the top again, and then it comes back and it goes over the top again. So you're having a return and another return and another return. You have it like 3 times before it's really out of there for good.
Yeah.
And when I take note of where my Saturn is in my chart, and when other things hit it, I take note of what's happening. And there's
Mm-hmm.
always something happening whenever anything hits my Saturn. This retrograde that we had, this Mercury retrograde, was sitting right on my Saturn
Oh,
in
wow.
the real sky. Like,
Mm-hmm.
it just went back and forth, and it sat there from January 1st until like a couple days ago, and it was been sitting on my Saturn this whole time.
Hmm.
And there were things happening around me, where people were experiencing things that I'd already lived through, and we were able to talk about it. And I was able to talk them through whatever they were going through.
Mm-hmm.
And so, it was very interesting, Mercury being there, going over the past, going forward, communicating about patterns and things that have already happened to me.
Mm-hmm.
So I would take that as symbolic. I get to talk about and help
Yeah.
and help someone else get through a rough patch. So,
Do you feel the moments leading up to return for anyone, Venus, Mars, but like the degrees or even the months before the actual return? Will people
I
start,
think,
how do you feel about that?
well, for one thing, the moon is going to hit all those spots at least once a month.
Yes.
It's going to hit.
Yeah.
And I think if you know where your planets are and you know where those spots are, you can be really aware of things going through, and
Mm-hmm.
you can feel those energies, and you can be aware of whether this is temporary or whether it's going to be something long term,
Mm-hmm.
depending. So if it's a outer planet hitting something in your chart, it's like you've got some Neptune things happening. So there's, some, you can tell like
Yeah.
what's going to be a long-term thing and what is just going to be a sort of a hit and run
Yeah.
thing in your chart.
Because I posed that question to you about the different returns in real sky versus Western and again, I guess you're answering the question. It's basically based on what you want to follow.
Yeah.
Because
I mean,
with Western, my return in Western astrology isn't for a few more years, while sidereally, it's now. And so I'm wondering, would you
so
honor both returns?
what you're saying is sidereally, your Saturn, the sidereal Saturn is where your birth Saturn is? I mean, your Western Saturn is? Is that what you're saying?
No, no,
No.
it's different. The
Okay.
Western Saturn is in a different sign.
Right.
And Western, that'll happen in the next few years. But sidereally, it's happening right now sorry, I keep saying sidereal, in my real sky
Chart.
sign. Does that make sense? Because I have two different signs for the Western, and you're smiling.
I'm remembering that we looked up your Saturn.
Yeah.
And the Saturn in the real sky isn't there yet.
From what I see, it's happening now.
Well, the Saturn is in Aquarius still, and it's in like the last bit of Aquarius. It's got quite a ways to go before it hits where your Saturn is.
Okay. I thought it was already there.
No,
Okay.
I think no,
Thinking of.
it's not there yet.
Okay.
Not there yet. You're
All
reliving
right.
something that happened. You're reliving things that have happened already. There's a pattern there, but that's a pattern from before your Saturn return.
Okay. All right. All right. Now, okay.
Yeah.
I'm remembering now in the conversation what you were saying. Okay. But in a way, it sort of goes to like as Saturn is going through the signs and you're getting closer to it, would you start feeling those influences?
Well, I think as we get older, you can see the patterns in your life better. Like it's very easy to say, okay, when was the last time I lived through Saturn being here in Aquarius? And I can go back to 1993 or whenever that was, and I can look at those times and I can say, oh yeah, this is what was happening then. And now I see the same sort of thing is happening. I'm watching this happen with someone else, or, that sort of thing will happen. I didn't notice this until I was 49. When I was 49, is my first trip to Egypt. It happened on my birthday was the last day of the trip. I turned 49. So I turned 49 for like more than 24 hours. I was in my birthday for more than 24 hours, flying in a plane back to New York.
Yeah.
And all of the things that had happened to me when I was 21, all the spiritual awakening things, all of that stuff started revisiting me again. The same people, the same things, only this time the dreams that I had, I was standing in the places where I was having the dreams about ancient Egypt. And I was able to talk to the people who I had met back then and say, yes, this really did happen. And I saw this place and, this is real. This is a real place. It's not just a dream.
Yeah.
And so there was closure in a way, and it was this kind of this thing that said, yes, everything you're getting is real, and you can handle it. And this is all happening for a reason. So when you're 21 and you're having downloads of past life stuff and you're meeting people who you recognize, it's overwhelming, and your spiritual doors are blown open, and, you have all this magical stuff happening. And, when you're 49, you've been with this same practice for all this time, and now you're seeing a tangible, yes, this is real.
Yes.
Yeah. Be okay with that.
I know with Western, Chiron is every 50 years, 49, 50, 51 years.
Chiron became a big thing after I was already in astrology. I think my astrologer started using Chiron in 86. And so it didn't really stick with me. I didn't care so much. It seemed like that was the spot. That was the ouchy spot. And I just didn't want to deal with that. I couldn't even tell you where my Chiron is. I don't know. I can't remember.
Okay. I just recall that with Western astrology, I think the Chiron return is 50 years, 49 or 50 years.
Interesting.
And
that's
what's that?
It's like a second Saturn return.
I guess in a sense, but it's in a different, it's the healer, but it's the healer. I almost associate with Piscean type energy, Chiron, because of how it got to where it is as the healer. But I think about when I turned 50, it was a good time because I put myself in a place where environmentally where I can heal. I was up in the mountains. I had just found this place, and I spent quite a few years up there. And when I was looking at my chart, Western wise, it's like, Chiron return 49, 50 years. So to me, that felt like it made sense. But then time went on, and I felt like I was ready to move on. Like I had already done the healing I needed. So now it's time to explore and share this experience that I've had, But now with my father's passing recently, I'm now going through another phase.
Yeah.
So it's interesting, and I think in the last 4 or 5 years, the astrology has definitely hit because of all these shifts that I've had. I could do a tarot reading for anyone to give them guidance as to what's going on right now, what they can learn from the past, how they could apply it to the future. But I do feel, honestly, that tarot can only go so far, and astrology needs to come in to kind of fine tune and maybe put some exactness to some things as to why things are happening the way they are. Because cards, I feel, can't really do that. They can maybe show the actions, the characteristics of and influences that came into these things. But for timing, it's definitely astrology.
I like using both. I like using both, and I like using them together. Even though I used tarot as a framework for this Real Sky Astrology, and you can use it like a tarot deck, I still feel like these are more like explanations, like explanation cards. When it comes to reading, I'll use my other decks for readings. I haven't ever really used Real Sky as a reading deck. It's more like, it just serves as a frame. Like tarot was the frame for me to write this astrology book I promised myself I would write. And this is just how that book came out. And I had to use tarot as the pictures that I could write about in order
Yes.
to create a book. Because I don't feel like I'm a writer, even though I have to write the books that go with my decks because no one else could possibly write them.
You know your own work. No one else does.
Right, exactly. And to try to, like, I have to do my best to write about it.
It's your baby. No one else is going to, be taking care of it.
Right. I think most people who create decks don't do the artwork. They do the writing, and then they have an artist do the artwork. And that's usually how it goes. And with me, it's like opposite.
I bring in the astrology, but not in a great way with my tarot readings, just to kind of fill in the blanks of like someone asks me a question and they can't understand why things are happening the way they are. I get their birth information, and I have another deck that leads with astrology, and I pull some cards from that, and I also associate it to anything that shows up in the tarot, like the major arcana archetypes, any signs, planets that show up there. Also, the decans that may come up if I start seeing patterns of wands and cups, so on and so forth. It's like I start piecing everything together and seeing that maybe there is some patterns. Like if someone's getting water or fire or certain elements, because I work very strongly with elements in my readings for astrology and tarot, that's where I start focusing where their energy, they're investing more time in, they may be too emotional about something like that. And they need to change that energy. They may need to create some balance. So we bring in some other elements into that as well. But you don't work with elements too much.
Well, because I've started thinking about why are we using elements? Like with these signs, why do they have elements? And I always felt strongly that, we have 3 signs that could have water. Aquarius, Pisces, and Capricorn could all have water associated with them because they all seem watery to me. And yet they're not. We have this boy girl order with the signs in Western astrology, and then we have these very meticulously perfect aligned elements, and that all feels very European magical work, which is fine. But I wanted to just step away from that just to see how it feels. Like, what if I looked at these signs as different elements, but in different clumps? Because I've already looked at all of the astrological signs from Leo to Sagittarius as feminine, and then all the other signs are masculine. Like the two sides of the world, one side masculine, one side, or not the world, the ecliptic, one side is feminine and the other side is facets of the masculine, with sort of androgynous things happening on the edges. And it feels very watercolory to me, and very blended energy, like a gradual transition of cause and effect. And I just have to kind of let myself be open and not be like rigid to the teachings just for a little while I'm metamorphosizing inside the cocoon. Like all the elements are in there, but it's just like, let me just rearrange my cells and see what happens. And, some things I'll go back to and some things I won't. And I started using elements. I had elements in my heart, and I kept all the traditional elements. But once I got into the real sky and started playing around with the Egyptian gods, that's when I kind of was like, wait, where are those elements coming from? And those feel Eurocentric to me. And I'm just going to let that sit for a while. And I don't do readings for people unless they're my friends and they need help. I don't do it for money. I don't do readings for money for people. I only sell decks and books. And so I don't have a practice that I have clients. I mean, I'm more like, I will do things for other people who are doing things for other people, like teach the teachers. I'll do readings for the readers. I don't have clients. I don't want to do counseling for people. I want to explore and do the art, and that I have to write is like bad enough. I just want to do the art, and that I have to write about the art so that people understand it. That's that's what I do.
That's where your calling is. Is to be that creative aspect, to be that creative individual.
Yeah, the symbolism, and just to merge with what do symbols mean and where do they come from and why are we doing the things that we do, and what works and what doesn't work.
Yeah.
And what does it look like without the layers?
I appreciate you sharing, how you feel about taking certain aspects and not using them, removing them, so that you can get a different perspective, so you can feel through it and see. I think I feel really, my connection to the elements are very strong because of nature. And I like to be in an environment where I see changes, like seasons, so on and so forth. So the influence of those energies of earth, air, fire, water, work for me. And it really opens up everything, when it comes to my practice, and weighing out the energies of why I may feel lighter on one thing, heavier on another, where I can strengthen some areas, where I need to let go to, put in some new, reinvigorated forces to kind of get everything moving. Um, it's so important, but we're all different, you
Right.
know? And
You
I'm
have,
not trying to justify
you're right.
what
I'm not
I
trying
do.
to change you. I
No,
just think
exactly,
that's your
exactly.
practice. And,
You know, and I
and
hold respect. I'm not gonna try to
right.
convert anyone. I mentioned to Julie, place that I do readings at, a woman that I was speaking to, um, I told her that, I do incorporate, some Western astrology into my tarot, but I'm exploring real sky sidereal astrology. And she's like, "What's that?" And I gave her just a really basic run through that depending on when you were born, you can actually be in a different sign. And she didn't appreciate that.
I know
And
people don't appreciate
no,
that.
well, because I think she said she's been having readings done for like 15, 20 years, and it works for her, and she got very, not defiant, but she's like, I work with some of the top astrologers in the world, and I didn't mean to laugh like that, but it's just her approach was very confident, and she goes, "I'm sticking with it." I go, "That's totally fine. I wasn't trying to convert you. I was just introducing, the system, the way it works."
Yeah.
And she told me the sign that she was in, um, Western, and I looked sidereal, and she is that sign. So she's perfect both ways.
Yeah. I
It
mean,
works for her. Yeah.
right. And well, I just wanted to do it the way the people would have done it in the ancient times. They would have seen, and they would have, and that's where
Upholding
the signs
tradition.
come from.
Yeah.
And I can understand why it stayed the same.
Yeah.
And I just feel like I needed to move out of it. I didn't want to. I was very reluctant at first. But now I can't go back. Now that I've been doing
It
Real
is
Sky for 14 years, I have no desire to be in a sky that doesn't move ever.
excellent.
And I don't know, I felt like saying the sun is in a sign that it isn't in just didn't feel right to me anymore. So I can't. Yeah.
I'm going to
And
go on,
well,
Julie. Sorry.
no, go ahead. I'll take a sip.
Okay. And apologies, everyone. I'm just rolling with the conversation with Julie as it happens. So
This
I
is how
am
we
looking. Yeah, I'm looking at the comments. There are comments that people are placing. But I want to point out Mel, who is Woolly Hermit Mysticism. So here we go, Mel. Do constellations mean nothing in astrology?
Constellations mean everything in the real sky.
Elaborate on that.
Well, the constellation is the pattern of stars where the planet is actually traveling. And so the sign is the constellation. And that was the way it was in the ancient times when they wrote it down in the book and put it in the library. And when the people from the Renaissance found the scrolls and opened it up, it was still written down. And they looked in the book and they read the book. And the astronomers looked at the sky and went, no, the stars aren't there anymore. They're over here. And then there was this split between astronomy and astrology. And there was never a split between astrology and astronomy in the ancient times. And I'm just, for me, putting it back and also incorporating the meanings of the gods from that period to help define the sign meetings. And and so far it's really working. I mean, when I don't know someone and I just start blathering about the attributes of specific gods that happen to be where their planets are, I've had some aha moments come back at me. And so I'm going to stick with it, because if that's what the ancient people were doing for 4,000 years, then that's what I'm going to do.
For the next 4,000, Julie.
Well, yeah.
Reincarnated.
A couple of decades while I'm still alive.
You can reincarnate in another form, and someone else will.
And I want this work to be done so that I don't have to do it again in my next life.
Well, it's interesting because I'm thinking in my head, how can we introduce to people this system? And in a matter of speaking, I feel we have to thank you, Julie, because you're making a voice for it, you and Patrick. There are a few other people that I see on YouTube that do use real sky, sidereal, astronomical astrology. But there are still the ones that are like, no, this is the way it is. And again, we don't want it to be, on opposite rings, but how do you feel that we can approach this in a way so that people can start opening their mind and just see a different perspective? People seem to be scared of change, and I understand that.
Well,
But
I think when people are like very steeped in Western astrology, and they're, it's almost like you've taken their team away. You've taken my team sport. This is my team, and now I'm not on the team anymore. I'm somewhere else, and I don't even like those people. You've given me a new shirt, and I don't like it. I I think it's fair for people to know that there's such a thing as precession, and that this is a juicy, moving, alive, moving universe, and things are always changing. And I think that people should be able to be aware of that and not have astrology become the next dogma that can't change and won't change, and you're doing it wrong. I'm not going to tell you or anyone else who's using Western that they're doing it wrong if that's what they want to do, but they should be aware that the sky, since those charts were established, has changed, and that will change, and that we have a very short window of age of Aquarius. And I don't want us to miss it, because Aquarius is this harmonious age of spontaneity and getting what you need when you need it and being on time. And I don't want us to miss it. I don't want us to go all the way to the age of Capricorn, where everything is unscripted and there's no maps. I don't want us to get there before we've had our moment of being spontaneous, because, the Pisces is this timeless message. That's the theme for the Piscean age, is a timeless message. But timeless in a way that it's locked in time. So I want us to know that things are moving and things are changing, and that there's a consistent consciousness out there, that if you think you're navigating without a net, you think that you don't have a net, you don't have any sort of structure, there's still a structure out there. There's this wonderful, spontaneous, don't plan it, because the best things happen when you're not making a plan. That's Aquarius. That's the age of Aquarius. You're going to fall into the perfect spot, meet the exact person that you're supposed to meet, because you didn't plan it, or because this is the day that you took off and you went off your schedule. And this is the day where the magic happens, because you're not locked into what you said you would do. You're just being spontaneous. That's the age of Aquarius. I don't want us to miss it. We've only got like 1,000 or 1,500 years left of it. So let's not miss that, because it's an integral step. We don't want to go from crawling on our bellies and miss crawling and go straight to walking. We want to crawl first. We want to get all the stages of development. We don't want to miss out.
You just summed things up there for a lot of people. It's that realization of where we are, and accepting how things are, and learn from it, and to move forward in that sense. But that's why I feel it's so important to have information that you have to share, and everyone else. But, to put experience behind it, we have a younger generation that that are creating some of the most amazing things. But I also feel too that they're not fully experiencing things, because they're just living where they are right now, there's nothing wrong with that. But I think they have to understand, and I say it over and over again, we need to know our roots. We need to know where we came from. We need to see where all these patterns or habits that we've developed, where they come from, And if you look astrologically, you'll start seeing it. you know? But I feel, one thing that comes to me when talking about real sky astrology is just the fact that like you're stating, things are moving. Real sky is moving, and Western tropical is fixed. Okay. And so you can get locked in to those same signs, and that they don't move in that sense. The only thing that moves is us. We grow through these changes. And so when someone is trying to understand their growth from a Western astrological perspective, I have to be careful how I say this, versus a sidereal real sky perspective, they're going to see a lot of shifts, correct?
Wait, say that again.
I I can get deep in my thoughts, and it may make sense to me, and that's what I'm saying. I have to be careful because I'm talking about two different systems. So that's why I want to be careful with how I say this. So we have someone who's looking at their natal chart from a Western astrology point of view. Let's say they're in their 40s or 50s now. They've grown up from the time they were a child to where they are now. So they see what's happened in their lives from a Western astrology point of view. Now, when they take that chart and they move it into real sky astrology, they're still the same age. They could be a different sign. Are they going to see a significant change? I know it depends on their signs and their planets, their placements, but could the interpretation of a real sky sidereal natal chart be that much different, significantly different if someone's in their 40s
I think the
versus
descriptions are going to be, well, like you said, the descriptions can be clearer. I'm
Okay.
for
Okay.
myself, especially. I mean, when I looked at it and when I've done things for other people, the description is clearer. And then they go, oh, that makes more sense. That makes more sense. I
Mhm.
am that. That does make more sense. And they were
Mhm.
trying to, they couldn't understand, or they won't like astrology. Like these people won't like astrology, and then they'll get the real sky and they'll go, oh, that makes more sense. And then they become
Mhm.
interested in the
Yeah.
astrology. Um, it depends on if you're a cuspy person, a person who's on the edges of a sign that slips you back into a different sign, or if you're strong, like you're still the same sign, even through between real sky and Western, you're still the same sign. You might really be really strong in that sign. So,
Mhm.
um, everything in my chart changed except my rising sign when Kasha did it. My
Okay.
rising sign stayed the same.
Okay. How do you identify with that?
Well,
It's the same, right?
it's just the same. I mean, it just reinforces the art.
Mhm.
Like it just reinforces the art. That's
Okay.
all. And I already knew that.
Okay. That's when looking at my chart, I was comparing, and things did shift, things did move over. And like I mentioned earlier, there's still some aspects with Western that I feel I'm a little bit closer to. And so I need to look, I have to revisit the chart again, because maybe those aspects that I'm feeling closer is because I think a few of my signs are cusp, like early, like they're like between 1 and 5 degrees. And I can maybe still feel some of that carryover of the previous sign going into this new sign.
When the new workbook comes out, I actually made it dial so that you can take it, tear the page out, laminate it, and put it over the top of your chart and turn it and line it up so that you can see with the real size of the real constellations if your planets are still in the same
Yeah.
sign, or if they're not. That should be helpful. I also
Yeah.
did an extra dial for um, the phases of the moon, so that you could use the dial again to see what phase your moon is in based on what sign your sun is in.
Yeah. I
And
think I'm sorry, go
having
on, Jill.
that I think having that information, the phase of your moon is so important
Mm-hmm.
to.
Yeah. I think by having those tools so someone can fully understand, not completely negate this form of astrology, will help to understand, because it's like, oh, I'm going to have to read all this stuff over again. I'm going to have to do this. They're just going to get put off. If they can physically have something that they can compare it to.
Yeah.
Like right now, I made mention that my date book for 2024 is all sidereal. So I'm making the commitment to live 2024 in the sidereal realm.
Well,
But
that'll be fun.
I'm going back and forth because I decided if I should get a sidereal wall calendar or not. So I decided to get
Get an astronomy app. Just get an
I
astronomy
like
app.
no, I like
You
I
like to
really
look
like
at
to
it.
look at things. Yeah, I need to look. I need to
Patrick
write.
has Patrick has one.
I
Patrick just
saw,
did one.
but what I ended up getting is now here all the booze come through. I got a Western chart because I wanted to see the movement. I wanted
Mhm.
to see what the phases of the sign and moons are um, in Western in comparison to what I have here in the date book, because the date book is based on my natal chart, but it also does the mundane. So sidereally. So I'll have the sidereal placements for where we are this year and also for my birth. And then the tropical Western I have, because then I could start seeing the differences. I just have to be mindful when I speak that whatever sign and planet I'm talking about, that's either Western or in real sky. So I'm doing this because I feel it's a good transition for me, so I can sort of see
Yeah.
what's happening
So you can keep your stability.
at this time with the sidereal and the Western.
Yeah. I'm
What's that?
proud of you for trying this.
Oh,
I
I
mean,
missed what you said.
I said I'm really proud of you for trying this. And I know you need to keep your stability, and that, you've got a lot going on, and this is just another thing to add to things that are unstable for you.
Yeah, yeah. Well, it's just I'm in transition. So it's just like I want to, as everything is moving, I kind of want to go with it and see where the patterns are working. And then or the movement's working. And then if I start seeing, oh, okay, now I'm starting to see it sidereally, real sky. Okay, now I see the difference with the Western
Yeah.
and just see how this year is going to shape.
Yeah.
So I'm being neutral, I guess I'm saying, because sidereal is something new and I want to take with the understanding of what I have already with Western and see how how I can apply it or not apply it to real sky. Okay, so I'm going to stop talking. Let's
No,
take a
no, it's
few.
good you can talk. I was just answering questions about the workbook.
Okay, you typed it in.
I did. I'm able to
Okay,
do that.
I
First
know.
time.
Did you? Let's see here, Jonathan. And I'm sorry, probably some people have left in the time. It threw me off too, Mel. I fought going from Virgo to Leo. Um, that helped me come to terms. That must have been a relief, Jonathan. Because I think when we use the word "I feel like this particular sign," more than likely, if you feel that that moon is in that sign because you're feeling it. You have that connection to it. And I know Jonathan's, he's mentioned a few times about feeling really connected to Virgo, so that makes sense.
Yeah.
Sidereally, that the moon for him is in Virgo. And you were saying the importance of the inner planets, not so much the sun as it is all the inner planets. Robin, I'm sorry, you've been so generous with the comments, so I'm sorry I haven't been able to point out. Let's see here. I'm backing up here. So yes, I don't know if you saw that.
She's going to start dreaming about it. This happens. Sometimes this happens. I know I dream about it. But when other people dream about it too, then I know that there's something up.
It's the collective. It's the collective together. Oh boy. This is going back to when we were talking about Real Sky Astrology readings for the shop owners. A lot of people still don't know what this is. So
Robin is a person who does Real Sky Astrology charts for people. So she's on my website, and I often refer her to, like, anybody who asks me for a reading. I'll say, here is my girl, my go-to girl for doing readings, Real Sky. She'll do your chart for you, or Kasha will do a chart for you. I don't do charts for people. And, you know, in the 90s, I was ready to do charts for people, right? But I was an Apple user, and there were no applications for astrology for Apple. You couldn't get a program for Apple. And
everything
so
was
then
PC.
tarot exploded, and I just went into the tarot and did tarot things, and the astrology kind of lagged behind. And I didn't do charts for people. And I don't know if my reaction would have been worse if I had been doing charts for people for like decades and then been turned on to Real Sky. I would have had a lot of backpedaling to do if I had been doing charts for people. But I know that you can get charts generated through mastering the astrology. What is it? MIT.
There's different.
Yeah, he has a program.
Yeah, you could go through AstroDeist and you could change based on whatever system.
Yeah, but
it'll change the houses as well.
That's what my workbook is about, is like being able to convert your Western chart into a Real Sky chart. So I have that. But I also have resources in the back where people who actually do charts for you if you don't want to do your own. I mean, if you can get through my workbook, you can do charts for other people. You should be able to do other charts for other people if you can get through my workbook.
I'm going to have to read the workbook probably 2 or 3 times.
I should get you a copy of the new one. When the new one is done, I'll get you a copy, because the new one is so much better. And, you know, Jamie and Gerald went through it. Like, we want you to do this and we need you to do this so we understand. And because Gerald didn't do astrology, really, he didn't know the glyphs. He didn't know like what the symbols were. So he had all of these, like a checklist of things he wanted in the book so that he would understand it better and what words belong in the glossary. And so I went through and did it all again and corrected things, because I had questions about whether the houses moved with precession. And it turns out, no, the houses do not move with precession. The houses are the framework that stay put. That is the grid that stays put.
Explain the term precession.
Precession is, it's because the earth is tilted on its axis and it has a wobble, and it goes like this, like a top, which means we're pointed, the top of the North Star changes. And when the North Star changes, it makes a full cycle around in a circle. And every 72 years, there is a precession of the equinox. And it's every 72 years, we go back 1 degree. And over the eons, the ancient people noticed that the constellation that was on the horizon an hour before sunrise at the equinox had changed. And you have to understand the Egyptian mindset of Mahat, and that Mahat is balance. And the equinox is balance. The spring equinox and the fall equinox, but the spring especially, because that's the eastern horizon, what you're looking at.
Yeah.
And the balance between the day and the night, the daylight hours and the night hours. And equinox is equinox for the whole world. When it's equinox for the entire world. So whatever the constellation is at the horizon was like the important, the name of the age, the essence of the age. And that will stay for like approximately 2,000 years, give or take the size of the constellation. And so after 2,000 years of seeing this one constellation on the horizon, suddenly there's a different, well, not suddenly, but gradually there's a different constellation. So you get your age of Taurus, and you have your age of Aries, and then you have your age of Pisces. And now we're really in the age of Aquarius, because if you look at the sky an hour before the sun rises on equinox, you will see the constellation of Aries. Or not Aries, you will see the constellation of Aquarius. You will not see Pisces. If you have an app, the sun is in Pisces, so you're going to never see it because the sun is there blocking it out. But if you had an app, you would see maybe 3 little stars on the horizon. And that's it. And that's not viewing a constellation. That's just a remnant. And Aquarius is right there. And that's the sign of harmony and getting what you need when you need it. It's spontaneous. It's the consciousness of the universe. It's these zigzaggy lines of electric energy, and it's just
Even
this.
the
Go ahead.
I was gonna say, I know just the delay is like, okay, go. Even the interpretation of the signs are read differently in real sky.
Well,
In a sense.
Aquarius is always associated with the star card in the tarot, right?
Mhm.
And so when you look at the star card, I was taught early on that the star was Sirius. Sirius is the biggest or the brightest star of the night sky. Sirius was so important to the ancient Egyptians that they marked the first time that they saw Sirius with all of the monuments on the Giza Plateau. The constellations that were in the sky in 10,450 BC are aligned to all the monuments that are there
Mm.
at the Giza Plateau, including the Sphinx. And that would have been the time, the age of Leo, when the Leo constellation was on the horizon. There's connections between the star Sirius and the goddess Isis. There's connections between Osiris and Orion. All of these constellations mean things to these ancient people, and there's stories and mythologies connected to them.
Wow.
So there's history there, and when you look at the star Sirius, that was the star that would signal that the flood was coming, and every year there would be a flood because there are monsoon rains that come into Ethiopia that flood the Nile from way deep in Africa, and that means there'll be a flood coming, and they could depend on that flood. And that was this spontaneous, dependable, just as the harvest was through in the spring and everything was turning back into desert, the star would disappear and the flood would come. It was known as the tear of Isis, and it would disappear into the sun, and then the flood would come. And Sirius has a cycle of 365 days. So it's more in sync with our calendar than anything else. And the Egyptians would track it. And there's some people who think that we are a binary system with Sirius. And I've heard that being said, that we are a binary system. Our star is connected to Sirius in that way. So there's all kinds of like really important spontaneous things that are associated with that star, and the star card and Aquarius are connected. Also, the Aquarius symbol of two jugs pouring water is the same symbol as the hieroglyph for the Nile. When you have, there's a man with two jugs of zigzaggy water and a big snake around him, and that's the hieroglyph for the Nile. And so it's like we have these symbols and they're in the cards, and they come from a really ancient place. The ancient Egyptians didn't have cards, but the symbols that are found in our tarot cards are from another time. They're from a more ancient time. And some of the star cards have a horse in them, and so that people use that as the star to travel by. And even the stone circles at Nabta Playa in the desert, about 100 miles away from the Nile, have alignments to Sirius and Orion. And that's how important those stars were to those ancient people who used it to know when they could travel in the Sahara again. Once it was turning into a desert, the savannah was turning into a desert about 8,000 BC. It was starting to change, and the humid period stopped in Africa. And so people left the sub-Sahara area and moved to the Nile, which had been more swampy and now was becoming drier as the climate changed. So there's a lot of human history that we don't talk about, or we haven't learned about enough. And we all come from Africa, because the DNA is more diverse in Africa than anywhere outside of Africa. Everything comes from Africa. So we all journeyed through, all of our DNA journeyed through there to get to wherever else it ended up. And I think our roots are all there. And that's why I'm going back as far back as I can.
Are you going to physically make a trip?
Again?
Yeah.
I would love to, but we'll see. We'll see what calls me back and how I get back there. If I get a chance to go, I would totally go.
Yeah. I feel after this creative period that you go through, because I had discussed, having people understand this more, get it out more in the forefront. You'll have stuff to promote. Would you be open to doing lectures, workshops? How do you feel about that? Or are you feeling more?
I do some. I mean, this last year I did a class at the Women in Spirituality Conference, and I haven't done classes there in almost 10 years. Because I kind of put my suitcase away in 2015, I put my suitcase away, and I was kind of like, okay, I've been doing this for 11 years. I think, it's time to like limit my carbon footprint. And then my grandchildren were born and my kids got married, and I kind of just settled into being grandma. And now the kids are all in school, so I'm back out in the world again and working on projects.
I say that because of what you said earlier about, you didn't say verbatim, but leaving I said that you would be reincarnated in 4,000 years and whatnot. But I think you're getting, by doing lectures and letting people know more about this, maybe you and Patrick can be a dynamic duo for one of these, and get it out there so people can see this, and you're opening up this information to another generation,
Right.
to another group of people so that they could see this. I'm the kind of person that if I believe in something that I feel has a lot of influence and potential in a good way, not in a bad way, get it out there. Okay. And
Yeah.
so it's going back to me. It's like, how can we get more people to know about this? We have the channels and stuff, but I think physically by going out there and
Yeah,
whatnot,
going out there is really
it would be
important.
great.
Yeah.
You know?
And I did classes, and I would do travel a lot between 2006 and 2015. And even before then, I was doing classes in, like, I did my first class in 1994 when Ancestral Path was first coming out. So I have been doing classes in, like, 97. I started doing classes at the Women in Spirituality Conference, and I did that pretty regularly. And um, but I got tired. I just
It's a
kind of
lot of
got
work.
tired, and I needed a break after
Yeah.
5 tarot decks and
Yeah.
traveling and traveling and traveling. I just kind of felt like, you know what? I just want to just be in tune with the seasons and just work on my garden and not be traveling, you know? So,
And that shapes you too, that
yeah,
time for
yeah,
yourself.
yeah. And I did disappear for a while. Um and I had grandchildren. So I
Yeah.
was busy with babies. And then the plague hit and YouTube happened,
Yeah.
and then I was like, maybe I could do a class, and maybe I could go to some conferences again. And I did. Last spring I went again for the first time in
Mhm.
a long time.
How did it feel?
It was fun, and it wasn't a drag. It was like,
Yeah.
wasn't work. It was more
Yeah.
like getting together with my friends and being out, and
Mhm.
having my husband be retired. We didn't have to get home, and he didn't have to go back and teach. So that
Yeah.
made a big difference too. And us being free and not tethered by any children, or our own or grandchildren. We aren't
Yes.
we don't have to be responsible on a weekly basis, and
Mhm.
we can be more open to traveling. So long as
I
someone takes care of our chickens for us. Yeah.
I think it would be great. I think since you could share your experience of how, you were practicing one form of astrology for such a long time. Share that. A lot of people, I don't know if there's quite a few people like you who started off in Western and they went to sidereal, real sky, or some people who are just like, I love real sky. Well, I think Robin, right? Robin started off
Yeah,
Western,
sure. Yeah. Yeah.
and
I think I don't know, I think you have to be open. Well, I think being an artist, you kind of get used to happy accidents. You can have a plan when you're doing an art piece, but some things just kind of happen spontaneously, and I call them happy accidents. And,
yeah.
like, sometimes a painting will turn out way better than I planned because I just
Mhm.
went with the inner voice instead of, going with the plan I had, like, drawn out.
Yeah.
Um, so I think that's kind of how I approach everything. Uh,
Mhm.
like, I have
Without a plan.
a sketch, and kind of block it in, and then block in the colors, and then work on the details. And, whatever spontaneous thing happens, just add that to the mix. And,
Mhm.
um, yeah, I think that's kind of how I do things.
Okay.
And I do get downloads. Like, I'm working on this Oracle deck, 432
No.
cards. I know, it's crazy, right?
Oh.
12 sets of 36 cards. So it's really just 36 cards per age, right?
Yeah.
And
It's a deck of ages,
yes,
just to
it's
clarify.
Oracle the Great Year, the Oracle of the Great Year, Real Sky Astrology, Oracle of the Great Year. And while I'm working on these timelines, I get all my timelines done. And then I go, well, I should probably do them in increments of 72 years. Like that should be my, and then I already get the timeline done. So I'm back redoing, putting in my little dots for every 72 years as a dot. And I have how many degrees it is. And then I have my size of that and the dates lining up, the dates where significant things happened in the world.
Yeah.
It's very eye-opening to see these things plotted out.
Yeah.
Like all these things, domestication of cattle, the sowing of wild cereals, and they're all right on top of each other. And, they're all happening, coinciding with, the Zeptepi the first time. And it's pretty amazing during the age of Leo. Like it's all happening during the age of Leo. And I have to look at that and go, there's dialogue happening here. And even though the zodiac probably doesn't go back any farther than Leo, I can use that system as a divining tool to look back farther. Once you have the cards or once you have this system, you can
You
go
can
back
use it.
and
Yeah.
use it as divination to say, okay, what was happening during the age of Libra, even though no one had designed a scale yet. There were no such thing as a scale yet, but how does this balance play in? How does that,
Yeah.
so.
This deck, I'll call it the deck of ages for now. So it's going to be a long time coming, right?
Yes, I've been working on this since 2020, because when Real Sky came out, I was doing an interview and we were talking about the houses because she liked my chapter on the houses and she wanted to know more. And I thought, I do too. Like, what if I go back in time and look at the 26,000 years and then all of a sudden the Oracle was born. And I worked on it. And then December of 2021, I was like, I'm not doing this. I'm not doing this. It's too much. And I put it away.
Yeah.
And I do that sometimes. I'll just put it away. But then I got it back out again and started working on it again, and it got finished. And now I need to do the book. So
What age are you?
Maybe it will be like a series of 12 little books and 12 little decks that you can collect.
I think that would be nice.
Yeah.
Because then if you can choose,
right.
the age to
your sun sign or,
Exactly.
Yeah.
I think that would be really good.
Yeah.
Is this something you want to self-publish or would you?
Definitely. I mean, I could go through someone, but I'm not gonna, because then, if you go through a publisher, then you always have to like accommodate what will sell, and they're not usually willing to go along with your creation the way it is. They want to have a say in how it should be, and this isn't marketable, and you're not going to do that. Or you have to limit your pages. You have to, I'm not doing that. I do much better self-publishing than with a publisher.
It's going to be a lot of work. 12 decks, 12 books.
Yeah.
Okay. All
I'm no
righty.
stranger to that.
We'll wait.
Okay.
Even if you have to do it in pieces, like maybe 3 decks and 3 books for this year, and then maybe
that seems doable.
Yeah. So you don't have to overdo it, right? You pace yourself.
Yeah, that sounds very doable.
Yeah. I think that'll be easy for you, and then that gives you time to focus on the other ones as well.
Right.
Robin's your psychic.
What?
Robin's your psychic. She says, it's the deck I told her was coming. I felt it.
I know. She's always telling me. Her and my daughter, she goes, oh, Mom, you've got more decks coming out of you. I'm like, shut up.
Stop already. I'm working on enough already. Now people want us to do lectures. Yes, please.
Well, actually, this morning I kind of woke up with, I should do a book about moon signs. That I think I should do a book about moon signs. Like specifically a book about moon signs. That came this morning. Like I did a moon signs book, Western astrology, eons ago, like 2008. And this morning I kind of felt like, Real Sky deserves to have a moon signs book. Just the moon signs.
Yeah. I mean, the workbook, you talk about it. 13 signs, I believe.
Yes.
It's very basic. But to go into detail would be perfect.
Yeah.
Be great.
I think the phases of the moon really deserve to have some focus.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We'll see where that goes.
Yeah.
My 70s, right?
And then we have to talk about Venus, a book with Venus, Mars. And the next thing, books going with decks. It's like, okay, I got this book to go with this deck right.
Yeah.
It's wonderful. But this is where your love is. This is where, like you said, you get these downloads, you get these events and you have to follow through. Isn't that how Real Sky came about? Wasn't it a download?
It was a total download. It was my dream about the scarab beetle. Like out of nowhere, here's this beautiful scarab beetle pushing the sun, and it's the chariot. I'm like, oh my God, it's a tarot deck.
Just from that one.
Just from that one thing. And I'm like, oh no, it's a tarot deck. It's a whole tarot deck. And then of course I could see a structure and I knew I could write about that. And then I felt okay, because Journey into Egypt was supposed to be my Real Sky astrology project. It was supposed to be that, but it ended up being history and mythology and personalities, and
I think that's
not about astrology.
I think that's important for you, Julie, because of the Real Sky astrology structure based around Egypt history. You may want to write a book about Egyptian history relating to this, because then it gets tied in. See, one thing's gonna lead to another.
I know, because I'm a first quarter moon and we're never done.
Yeah.
First quarter moons are never done. There's always a spin-off job from the last job. There's 3 spin-off jobs from the last job. I know.
Remember what I was saying, that I felt with Western astrology, one of my signs in Western astrology is one to initiate, to get things going, but sometimes we never finish because we put too much, we do so many things at the same time, and eventually we need to finish it. So I'm in the same phase as you. First quarter, it's like, okay, let's get things going. Let's get things moving. So I understand that.
What sign is your first quarter in again?
It is, I'm gonna have to look.
Mine is Capricorn.
No, I know it's not Capricorn.
Mine is Capricorn. No, yours would be opposite of mine, because you're a Taurus. Almost opposite. Like,
well, you're asking my moon sign, correct?
Yeah.
Cancer.
Oh, there's your self-born. There's your self-born. There's your self-motivated.
Yeah, I guess. But it's so emotionally oriented.
Like that, because Kepra is the self-born. It is self-motivated. That's the whole description for Kepra. The scarab beetle. Moving things along, parenting. Because their little baby is in that dung ball.
Yeah.
That
the potential's in there.
And then it bursts out of this dung ball, and it doesn't have a mother because it's come out of it's come out of this dung ball, and it emerges out of the dung ball.
Oh, from the ashes of
That's right.
comes this.
Like a butterfly, only with
Yeah.
poo. As a composter is a very important animal. It's a very important
It's
animal.
breaking down, right? It
Yeah.
breaks down. There's nutrients. It fertilizes. I get it.
Yeah, it's like a butterfly. I mean,
Yeah.
it's all contained in their
Yeah.
and their little larvae is like a sarcophagus. It's where the shape of the sarcophagus came from. Is the
Mm-hmm.
shape of the larvae of the because the people with the sarcophagus, they always have a scarab beetle on their heart to protect their
Mm-hmm.
heart.
Yes.
And that's like really important. That's
Should
yourself
I,
motivated.
well, I was going to say, should I incorporate a
You need
scarab into my
you
practice?
do, you need a
Have it.
scanner. Yeah, that
Okay.
is yours. That first quarter, I'm I'm emerging, and emerging again.
Again, definitely.
Yeah.
Oh, well, look who showed up.
Aloha, Patrick. You made it. I can't wait to watch it back.
We've been on for, 2 hours.
Oh my God. It didn't feel
But
like
it
that.
always goes fast.
It
It
goes fast.
always, there's a little lull for a little bit, and then, because we're piecing our minds and the information. Patrick, thank you for jumping in.
Yeah.
Um,
So
I'd
why
be
did Jonathan say, don't tell me that? What were you talking about?
Oh,
Damn
I
it.
think it's the
Tell me that.
moon. I think it's, he mentions this,
Moon
that
science
the
with
phases
a
is part of
phase
it.
is a part of it. Yes, it's a
Yeah,
part of it.
yeah,
It's
you
really
need
a big
to.
part. It's a huge piece. Like
Yeah,
how we've
most
been
definitely.
ignoring the moon for so long. I mean, I've been doing moon stuff for a long time,
Mhm.
but most people just ignore the moon, like what phase it's in, and
I feel it's catching on because
it
there are a
really
few
has.
decks with like the Moon Oracle by Carolyn Smith, and then there's Moonology. I cannot remember the creator of that deck. So there are a few moon decks.
When Blue Moon came out, when I did Blue Moon, there was nothing about moons, and then I did Mahat, and nobody was putting moons into signs. Like they didn't know they
They're
had
just
them
in
in
phases.
signs. They didn't know they had phases. They didn't know what phase their moon was in. They didn't know, like back in 2006, nobody knew about what their moon sign was or cared or even knew about what phase it was in. Like I remember doing a lecture in like 1999, and I talked about the full moons in the opposite sign of the sun sign, and they were like, I have a moon sign? And I was like, yeah, the full moon is always in the opposite sign of the sun sign. And they were like,
Yeah.
what?
What does that mean?
Like, oh my gosh. And then, so I don't know. I've been mooning around ever since talking
Yeah,
about,
there was a few years ago, actually at the start of the pandemic, I got the Moon Oracle deck, and I liked it because it has a traditional sense to it, and it changed me, and it it went through the signs, it goes through the elements, and it's like, wow, you really get a sense of that, and it's a deck that I can work with and do readings um, like on a weekly or monthly basis because the moon goes every 2.5 days. So I can do a reading um, based on, how you should approach a situation, but more from an
yeah,
emotion side, an intuitive side. Like don't get over aggressive in this situation, work with this energy of this moon in this phase, understand the phase when it's waning. You may not want to put a lot of energy in until
that
after the new moon as it's growing, and then you start building. It's very important. I
is
totally
very
agree.
important. I mean, especially for people who are creative and they get excited at the full moon and they start a project. And then as the moon wanes, it goes in the closet and they feel,
Yeah.
oh, I don't want to work on that. and they have like a million projects in the closet because they've started all these things on the full
Yeah.
moon, and they're excited about it instead of thinking about it in the new moon and working progressively through, and then
Yeah.
taking that waning moon and finishing projects. So that's, I've been
Exactly.
preaching the word of the moon for a long time. Because I use the moon when I'm working. I
Yeah.
use the finishing time for finishing, and the waxing time for creating new, and the waning moon for solving problems. And like,
Yeah.
I can't break through an idea when it's creative time and I still have questions. It's during that waning moon that I'll be able to solve that.
I think also what's important too is incorporate Mercury, because we're connecting the heart and the mind. Where I feel by working with those two planets in particular, that helps us at least, kind of hone down a little bit. It's like, okay, this is how I'm feeling about this. Um, and, this is the approach I feel I need to take, but also take a moment and just see where Mercury is and see where the guidance of the sign in Mercury, if it's going to be of benefit for you. Like logically, does it make sense to do it because of the influence of that sign in Mercury, retrograde or not, and see where it is also in the chart, degree wise.
Right. And having Mercury retrograde, Fucus this time was great. Was
For
great
you.
for me. It was great for me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's how you use it. It's how you use it.
Yeah, you have to ride. You have to ride this. You have to ride this thing, and not fight against it. Go with the flow.
Yeah, especially when the signs are apparent. It's just like, it is what it is. What happened before we went live. I just, it is what it is.
Right.
It's nothing new. All righty. I made mention before we went live, if you would be kind enough to just pull some cards, two or three cards. And I want to ask, does anyone have any questions? And I know we're rambling, and no, we're not rambling. We're talking. With some rambling in between. But if anyone has any additional questions, and I try to get to as many as I could, but when I talk, I am so focused with the person I'm talking to. So if you do have a question or two, let us know. And Julie, go ahead and do your magic.
I've never read with Real Sky. I mean, I've never used it as a tarot deck, so this will be something new for me, because I usually read with Mahat. I usually read with Mahat, so I'm willing to try my own deck as a tarot.
So people can see how the deck is and whatnot.
I have the updated poker version of the Real Sky Tarot that I'm gonna.
Are there 3 sizes for this one, or just
sizes. Okay? There is a tiny mini size, really small, and then there's the poker size, and then there's the big size.
Okay, the big size being the tarot size.
Tarot size, a conventional. I think it's a little bit larger than a regular Rider-Waite pack. Just a little bit. All right. Okay. So tell me how many cards to pull.
Okay. I pulled 3. I usually do 3.
Yeah, that's what I was kind of thinking too. Should I just take it off the top, or should I cut it?
Cut it.
Right. And then take it off the top. All right. Ready?
Go.
2. Oh my goodness. 3. Oh my. Okay.
I'll stop.
All right. Here's what we have.
It's aggressive.
Here's what we have.
You could do one at a time if it's easier. I don't know.
Okay. The first card that I got was the moon in Capricorn is like, there's a,
Love that.
yeah.
Wow, that's powerful. I love that.
Yeah, there's in the background, you can see, if you can see, there's like a woven, there's like a warp, and the moon is like a shuttle going through the fabric of the universe,
Yeah, yeah, I see it there on the
back and
top.
forth. So the Capricorn, moon in Capricorn, it's about uncharted territory and going through uncharted territory. And the way to navigate through uncharted territory is to look for the patterns. And when you find the pattern, then you can move forward.
Okay.
And then the second card is my moon in Sagittarius. This is the hero villain theme. And it's the moment when Ptolemy 13 gave Julius Caesar the head of Pompey and totally misread the whole situation. So don't misread the situation.
Yeah.
Don't overreact. It's not going to get you anywhere to overreact. And like, I don't know that Ptolemy 13 realized that Pompey was the son-in-law of Julius Caesar, and it broke his heart to see that, even though they were warring with each other at the time. And there's all kinds of dynamics going on in this picture. Like, everybody's doing things to please another,
Yeah.
and only hurting themselves by misreading the situation. And then the last card is Saturn, the Tower. Saturn as the pattern maker.
Saturn, Capricorn.
Yeah.
Capricorn.
Yeah. So the patterns, again, there's patterns, and your life will show you the places where you make patterns, and that will help you navigate through the parts that you don't understand.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. That's
I like the interpretation.
Yeah. Like,
now I can understand why you went, oh.
I know. Like, I wasn't expecting to get Sagittarius moon. Like,
Sagittarius, Capricorn, and Saturn.
No, there's definitely no sugarcoating that one. Navigating through.
No. No, that's something that I think right now is where we need to be. I when I did readings last week, I was, using Sagittarius and Capricorn energy. It's like for Capricorn, when we start next week, real sky, we really need to find that discipline. We need to really find this structure for ourselves and make a commitment. The word that kept coming back to me over and over again was commitment. And that's something that a lot of us don't really have. And we find ways to get away from it, or to prolong making commitments, Making a commitment allows us to experience and to find a sense of discipline and also self-empowerment when you complete something, when you do something. And, I'm sharing part of me of what I'm going through that. So seeing the Saturn and the Capricorn in there is just like, okay.
Yeah.
It works for me, All righty. Any questions at anyone? I don't want to hold Julie up. We'll just talk for a few minutes offline, Julie.
Okay.
And then we'll wrap it up. So we have the book I saw in the comments. It's pretty much well done. You said you already sent the artwork, everything.
I
So
sent
2 weeks.
I sent it all in to get a proof. So I'll get a book back and a proof, and then I'll see if everything is the way that I want it to be.
Okay.
And then if it's good, then I'll let it go. I'll put it out there. And
Okay.
it'll be ready like instantly, pretty much instantly. So,
Did you plan everything sidereally? Real sky. Sorry, I keep saying sidereal.
did I plan it?
Oh,
I just
sorry.
like it just kind of just happened when it happened. Like
Okay.
I try to plan things out. I did plan to do my edits during the Mercury retrograde, and I finished just as Mercury went direct.
Yes.
Even when I thought I was done sooner than that, I had things I had to correct, so I had to go back in and correct again.
Okay.
So timing is always, the universe is on time, even when I try to push. Like,
Okay.
the universe is always on time.
Okay.
So,
Because I wonder if you do things and then you go back in hindsight when things start showing development,
then
and do you reflect back and look at the charts and
for
go,
sure.
oh,
Like when I put out Blue Moon and I worked really hard to get it out on a certain date, and it wouldn't
mhm.
didn't get out until there was a blue moon, and then it
Ah.
came out. So these things have their own life.
Uh-huh.
Mahat came out on the equinox, the fall equinox,
Okay.
exactly. Like I had
Okay.
no control over that. And Real Sky came out, or Journey into Egypt came out on the birthday of my grandson, like 3 years, no, 6 years, no, 3 years before he was born. So that, was an auspicious day that I didn't
Okay.
know about yet. And when I can't remember the date that Real Sky came out. I don't know. It's out
I'm
there somewhere.
curious. I'm curious with
I,
the next edition.
yeah, I don't know. It
Oh,
should be. I said mid-January. We'll see if I'm right.
okay. It's going to come out during Capricorn. So,
Yeah, I think so. I think it
yeah.
will.
So I'm just thinking about the cards that you pulled as well in relation to that. So
Yeah.
that's good. Those are all good placements. Julie, thank you so much.
Oh, thank you, Amy. Thanks for
Thank you.
having me.
Appreciate the time. Of course. I want to have you back.
Okay.
And we'll take this to a different level, our discussion.
Okay.
Um, and we'll see where the new workbook is, where you are with the deck of ages. So it's coming to me. Yes, I'm gonna place this here. Timing is everything. Really commit to the real Scott. See, you're die hard. You
He
are
is.
die hard,
He is.
Patrick. I
Patrick,
I we've communicated a little bit on Instagram, and he's like,
he's
"No,
so
sorry."
enthusiastic.
Yes. And I like that, it's
Yeah.
that belief, and you're going to stand by it and you're gonna talk about it, because it works. There's no
No
day.
going back.
I don't know, do we know what your sign is, Patrick? Is it publicly announced or
He's
no?
an Aries. He's the
There
warrior.
we go. There we go. I
Yeah.
love that. I love that. That is great. And we have to follow up here with Holly Johnson. Real Sky is it. So see what I'm saying? There is this enthusiasm, and it feels like it's just a a little it's a little
It
pond
is
that
a
needs to.
little pod of people who have embraced the Real Sky, and they
Yeah,
really like it.
yeah,
And
and
some.
I'm I'm the temperance right now, one foot's on the land and the other
That
one's in
was
the
my
water.
card this morning, Temperance.
It was.
It was.
Okay,
I
so
put
it
out a
is.
card that I put out, every day I put out a little short with music and the 2 cards that I randomly
Yes.
pull in the morning with the
Okay.
moon phase and what sign it's in, Real Sky. And
Yes.
that was one of the cards today was Temperance.
Okay. Temperance has come up a little bit for me, so it's I guess it's where I have to be. Aquarius rising and moon. Okay.
Timing.
Wow.
Patrick is timing
Thank you,
and
Patrick.
the warrior.
Wow. And then we have now everyone's sharing. Wow. Holly, you have 2 signs that would be for my Western in your in your real sky. What you know what? Let's clarify this for me. Should I stop saying sidereal with real sky? I don't wanna jump over
You can
anything.
say,
What's
well,
proper?
I would say true sidereal, because even sidereal isn't always necessarily exact.
It
Um,
isn't. Okay.
so I would say real sky is like was also called true sidereal. Um,
Okay.
but you can use real sky. I don't have a patent on it.
Okay.
But
Just word-wise,
even if
just
I
so
did, I would say use it. It's good publicity.
yeah, because
So,
then what happens is when people start hearing these 2 words, they're gonna think they're 2 different entities,
yeah,
and
it's
so
confusing.
what's that?
It's confusing. Like
Yeah,
too many terms for the same thing can be
yeah,
confusing.
and that was the other thing too with the dates. The dates that you have, the degree placement is different for real sky.
hmm I just go with what my app says. So
Okay.
my app is Go Skywatch, and other apps say different things. So
Mhm.
I I don't know, like your astronomy app. And when you get into these places where you're changing signs, they're
Mhm.
going to be blendy anyway. You're going to
Okay.
have energies from both
Yeah.
anyway. So
Okay.
I like to
Oh,
think of it as like a watercolor or a paint blending. So you're going to have a little blue with your green, and you're going to have a green blue there on the edge as you
okay.
mix them together.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just so there's clarity. So okay, true sidereal would be the same for real sky.
Yes.
Okay. Okay. And then I'm going to share Robin since everyone and Patrick. Thank you. True sidereal. Scorpio Sun, Aquarius. Wow. Wonderful.
Yeah,
Um,
that's interesting, Patrick. And Robin have the same Aquarius moon, the
I see that.
spontaneous.
Have they
They're,
worked together?
huh?
Have Patrick and Robin, have you, the 2 of you
No,
worked together?
no, they have not.
Okay. I'd like to get a nice dynamic and get you, Patrick and Robin.
Yeah, that'd be
Let's
great.
do like what was that
Like the
program?
Brady Bunch.
Yeah, the Brave Bunch, or the other one was The Squares. What was that show,
Yeah,
that game
Hollywood
show?
Squares.
Hollywood Squares. We'll do this astrology
Square.
squares, and
Yeah,
just
that's
have you
great.
go back and forth. I think that would be wonderful. I think that'd be fun.
Yeah.
Real sky, true sidereal, true sky, astronomical astrology, the same. The reference
Oh,
point
thank
is
you, Patrick. He always has the words.
okay.
Yeah.
Now that further, I don't know what words because I think I've used astronomical in our discussion today, not true sidereal, but I've said sidereal.
Patrick
And
is
real
working
sky.
on an astrology book too.
What is that?
He's been charged with making an astrology book too. So Patrick is trying to write an astrology book or
For
starting
real?
work. Yes, for real.
Okay. Okay. We will be there's a lot to okay. Oh my God. I'll probably have to leave the room and let all of you guys just go amongst yourselves.
Look at
Okay.
Robin. Robin's ready to burn
Okay.
it down too.
All right. Well, then we'll definitely do it. We'll definitely do it. Is
Uh,
everyone on the same time zone?
I
No,
think Robin
Patrick's
and
3
Patrick
hours.
are both Eastern, and
Okay.
I'm Central,
Okay.
all on the same
So
continent.
and I like the humor. I tend to take things seriously, and that could be a downer, so we can lighten up. You can lighten up the load. Okay, so I'll reach out to all three of you, and we'll set
Okay.
up something maybe in the next month.
Okay.
The
That
month
sounds
of Aquarius. How about that? We'll do it during the month of Aquarius
yeah.
and see how things are going. And I'll send you emails if that's all okay,
Yeah.
and we can find a topic of discussion, and I'll make a little stamp size me in the corner and all three of you big. And
No, you're gonna be part of this conversation. No, you're
I'll
gonna
be
be the
like,
stability
"Oh."
in the room.
So that would be Taurus, Libra, and then what was it? We have
Aries and Scorpio.
Scorpio. Woo! That can be intense, actually.
That's
Yeah,
okay.
yeah. Fixed
Intense is
signs, with the exception of Libra, cardinal. Okay, that could be good.
yeah.
All right. Any last words? 2.5 hours
Just
later.
just thank you. This was great fun.
All righty. I'm happy you enjoyed. I'm happy that you took this time. Um, I don't want to end it like a speech. I want to thank my mom, my dad, and whatnot. Uh, those my creators. So everyone, I want to thank you for just watching and showing support, listening to us, sharing your comments. I like the space to be safe and open.
Yeah,
Gratefully, no trolls. If there was one that came in, it probably got burned
yeah.
down. I'll use Patrick's words, but you know, it's important when I come across different perspectives and different views. I like to understand it. So I bring people onto my channel for that, to ask the questions. As novice as some of the questions can be, there's a lot to learn from on both sides. So again, I want to thank everyone for taking part, and check back month of Aquarius for the astrology squares. Uh, Whatever the title is, we'll come up with something, and we'll see how that comes together. All right.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
I will make that commitment for the month of Aquarius.
Sounds
Okay, Julie, stand by again. Thanks, everyone. Please go to Julie's channel. I put her links in the description. Support, thumbs up, thumbs down, whatever. It doesn't matter. You're here. If numbers come up, numbers go down. It is what it is. And please check back. I may do some live readings later on. I have to process all of this, so let me see how I'm feeling. So I may just do a pop-up live later on. If not, hit the notification buttons. You'll know what's going on. Stand by for Julie's second edition or third edition.
Edition workbook. Real Sky
Okay,
Astrology workbook.
coming up in a few weeks. Early February, late January.
Probably by the end of January, it should be ready.
Okay.
If
Okay.
this proof turns out as like it should, then it will
Yeah.
be ready.
Okay. All right. Follow her on Instagram and watch out for information there as well. Okay. Stand by, Julie. Thank you, everyone. I will see you all again soon. Bye.